Thank you very much. Nice to see you guys. This is my first time in the center. It's absolutely beautiful, and yeah, very appreciative to get to be able to talk to you guys about condors. And I thought about this. There's a lot of history going on this week. There's a ton of history to the condor. There's an immense amount of history. That a lot of that can probably be read in a book. I'm going to try to tell you the stuff that can't be read in a book. The last 25 years of this recovery program has been happening here with the Peregrine Fund and a bunch of other cooperating agencies in the Vermilion Cliffs, and the birds have obviously occupied both Arizona and Utah, so I'm going to try to bring you in a little bit on that side of things. I will cover a little bit of the history of the birds and some of the issues facing the birds and how we're moving through those issues. So excited to talk to you guys and give you a little insight into the program. So yeah, I want to take you on a journey into the high desert of Arizona and Utah to a place where condors rule the sky. A place where a crew of really highly dedicated individuals are devoted. They've devoted their lives to saving a species, something really special. From sunup over the Vermilion Cliffs to sundown at the Navajo Bridge, towering over the mighty Colorado River, these are the places condors live. I'm going to show you some really great pictures. We have a group of volunteers that are great photographers, and they share all of their stuff with us. So I'm very fortunate to get to use some of those photos. We watch over this critically endangered vulture species. Condors are a New World vulture in the family Cathartidae. They evolved separately from Old World vultures. New World vultures include condors, black vultures, turkey vultures, even Andean condors down in South America. They're a social bird, they're inquisitive by nature, and they're highly intelligent. Sometimes you have to kind of wonder, right, who is watching who? We spend so much time peeping in on the lives of these creatures. Yeah, we know that they're watching us back. Condors have a 9.5-foot wingspan. Absolutely massive. Largest flying land bird in North America. They can fly at elevations of 15,000 feet. They can soar 200 miles in a day searching for food. We have had condors not only visit Arizona and Utah on the regular, that's their home range, but we've had condors go as far north as Wyoming, into Colorado, New Mexico, in Nevada. So condors, 9.5-foot wingspan, hardly have to flap. They use thermals and updrafts to travel across the landscape. They're probably one of the laziest birds you'll ever meet. With wings like that, you can afford to be lazy, I guess. Condors stand about 3.5 feet tall, and as I mentioned, they inhabit the landscapes of northern Arizona, southern Utah, but there are also condor populations elsewhere in North America. We have Southern California population, a Central California population, as well as Baja California, Mexico. So not just here in the Southwest, but this is one separate geographical region for condors in North America. They're easily identified by their white underwing triangle patches on their leading edge of the wings. Those are called the underwing coverts. More importantly, they're easily identified by those number tags, right? Condors being critically endangered, it is integral that we monitor and track each individual. So we give each bird a unique number tag. This one happens to be J4. It's a female, Condor 541. That letter usually correlates to the cohort that bird was born in. So the hatch year from the captive breeding facility, that is a captive raised condor released into the wild. So that bird was probably hatched, I would say, 2010. Yeah, 11-year-old female. That's cool, I like that. Unlike most raptors who hunt their prey, condors are strictly scavengers, known as obligate scavengers. They're social feeders. They can often be found feeding with 5, 10. I heard somebody say earlier they saw 30 condors feeding on a cow. Not uncommon. They definitely forage together, and they can decimate a carcass in the matter of half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. They can rip that bottom lower picture there on the left, that's what we find after a condor has visited a carcass. They can consume 3 to 5 pounds of meat in a sitting, and that's daily. So they're opportunistic feeders, so they will eat as often as they can. Here in the Southwest, we're really, really fortunate to be able to work in this beautiful backyard on the Colorado Plateau, from the Grand Canyon to Zion National Park. These are the places that condors live. These are the places that we get to work. We spend our days tracking condors and observing condors, documenting their behaviors, collecting data, trying to make sure that this species succeeds, a species that was nearly extinct and was extinct in the wild for some time. So at the end of the day, myself, the condors, we reflect. What a magnificent bird, and what a gift to be able to work with it. I never take for granted the work that I get to do, the meaning that it carries with me. I fell in love with these birds the moment that I got out here back in 2005, started working on this project, and ultimately, our work here is to recover the species. But more importantly, something I'm going to talk to you a little bit more in this presentation about, this is an effort to change human behavior. Humans are responsible for the decline of the condor, and humans are also the solution to the recovery of the condor. So we're going to go into that in a little more detail as we get through this presentation. So let me take you back. If you were alive during the Pleistocene, this is what you'd see. You'd see condors feeding on giant ground sloths, mastodons, woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, the classic Pleistocene megafauna. They were widely spread across North America and a great food source for condors. Fossil records show condors in the Pleistocene, and bones have even been found of condors in caves in the Grand Canyon that our current population of condors have used to nest in. So pretty cool stuff. This is their Pleistocene range. Condors ranged from Mexico all the way up to British Columbia and west of the Rockies. There's even fossil records of condors in Florida and New York as well. But more recently, their range was restricted to Southern California, coastal Southern California, and even up into the Sierras. They still had some range up there. One of the reasons they were restricted to this range, foraging. What could they feed on in this area? But marine life, right? Large marine life, whales. Whales would wash ashore on the coast, and a condor could sustain itself off of that whale for months. Sea lions, same thing. So this area provided, against all odds, as condors decreased and their population numbers dwindled, this area provided a stronghold for the population. But let's talk about why their populations were declining. First, changes in available forage. That's one of the things I mentioned with the extinction of the Pleistocene megafauna. But also think more recently, the American bison. There were 30 million bison on this landscape in the 16th century. Those numbers dropped to about 100 by the 1880s. That was a significant food source for a lot of different animals, a lot of different scavengers, and boom, nearly extinct. We had a lot of different changes across the landscape, but one of the things that actually probably helped condors was Europeans bringing in domestic stock. So we kind of had this, we helped and we hurt. We killed a lot of the natural species on the landscape, but we also brought in domestic stock, which provided some food sources for condors. Habitat loss. North America looks drastically different today than it did several hundred years ago. No big surprise on that one. Slow reproductive rates. Condors are a long-lived species. They can live 60 to 80 years. They reproduce slowly because of this. Their biology is such that they have one young every other year if they're successful. Just one. So very slow reproductive rate. If you introduce any cause of mortality into that system, into that species, you're going to have a hard time recovering it, and you're going to have loss very quickly. Shooting and egg collection, that happened. It wasn't as predominant as some of these other causes, but it definitely existed. And poisoning. Poisoning is the one we're going to talk the most about. Back in the 80s, when condors were declining, and we knew they were declining, there were only, by 1982, there were only 22 birds left in the world. We were able to put transmitters on some of them. We got permission to do a study. And so they put 5 transmitters out there on some of the remaining birds in the population so that we could find out what they were doing, where they were going. But more importantly, if those birds were to die in the wild, we could recover them because we didn't have really good data on causes of death. Of those 5 birds, 4 of them died of poisoning. 3 of them were from lead poisoning, 1 was from cyanide poisoning. So the cyanide, that's something that, with ranching, back in the day, man, if you had predators, large predators, taking some of your stock, you might want to put out a poison carcass so you could take out some of those coyotes or the wolves or bears. Unfortunately, the side game in that is that anything that eats that carcass could die. So if a carcass was, had some sort of poison in it, some sort of toxin, and a condor ingested that, it could potentially kill it. Poisonings, such as lead poisoning, is the big one that we're going to talk about today. That one has significant impact on our population. It's the leading cause of mortality for condors today at about 54%. So I'm going to save that one for a little bit later as we get into it. This picture right here shows 16 California condors flying at once over our condor release site in the Vermilion Cliffs. Pretty cool that we can say, I took this picture, got 16 birds in one picture when there were only 22 birds left in the world back in the 80s. It's just a sign to me of the progress that we've made in this program. By 1987, the last condor was removed from the wild in California. That was Condor AC9. Adult Condor 9 is what that stands for. And he was brought into captivity to be a part of the captive breeding flock. So in 1982, what they decided to do was start a captive breeding program. And this was actually fairly controversial. I don't know how much you guys know about this, but there was a big back and forth between a lot of groups about whether we should be trying to save this species or not. Was it worth it? Was it going to be humans grabbing the last condors in the wild, putting their grubby hands on them, and them dying in captivity? Massive failure. That was one possibility. The other possibility was that the captive breeding program was highly successful, and we were able to start producing birds in captivity for release into the wild. But yeah, scientists were at odds. Conservation groups were at odds. Ultimately, obviously, the decision to bring the birds into captivity and start a captive breeding program was made, and proved to be a good one, of course. But this here is a picture and proof that condors are cute at one point. Cuddly, even, maybe. Everybody always says to me when I see them and I run into people and traveling through the area, and they're like, they're kind of ugly. It's kind of a face only a mother could love. I'm like, this is kind of insulting to me. This is like, these are my kids. I guess I am the father. But condors were brought into captivity, and they started this captive breeding program in '82, and it was very successful, and mostly because of a technique they developed called double clutching. Condors, being a slow reproducer, only laying 1 egg every other year in the wild, in captivity, we could change that. If a female laid an egg, we could go in and we could pull that egg, and we could put it in an incubator, and she would notice that egg was gone, and she would recycle, and she would lay another egg. So you've immediately doubled your production in captivity. Not only that, but you could do this every year if you wanted to. So really, really great techniques that were highly successful. And that helped us grow the captive population to the point where we could start releasing birds back into the wild. Here are some population numbers. As we move through the last 100 plus years, you notice back in 1900, these are only estimates. These are our best guesses. We don't have exact numbers, but there were thought to only be a couple hundred birds left. That's not very many. Think about, here's a food for thought, right? Ornithologists back in the day, Audubon, Peterson, all these famous ornithologists, how did they do their compositions, their art for when they painted birds for field guides and such? Yeah, they shot birds in the wild and they took them in so they could draw them very accurately. This was a very common practice and accepted at the time. There's a couple hundred skins in museum collections across North America of condors. When you think that the population only numbered maybe a couple hundred back in 1900, that's significant as well. So we all kind of played a role in the decline of these numbers. But you'll notice by 1987, there were no birds left in the wild. They were extinct in the wild to start this captive breeding program. And we were able to start releases back into the wild in 1992 in California, in 1996 in Arizona. 2009, that's kind of a cool year. That's the year that the wild population outnumbered the captive population for the very first time. Those are the little milestones that keep us going. Currently, there's over 500 birds in the world and over 330 in the wild. That's progress. Still a long ways to go. How many birds can the landscape support? We don't know, actually. We've got our finest scientists trying to analyze and model and figure out what those numbers should be. Where are our targets? Initially, they were small goals, and so we're working on expanding those goals so that we can, at some point, work myself out of a job. I don't want to do this forever. No offense to the condors, but I'd like to work with some other species someday. I'd like to see this be successful. I'm going to take you into our program now. So let's zoom into the Vermilion Cliffs National Monument, which is where that arrow is pointing to. This is the general home range of the Southwest population. If I'm guessing that some of you have been on the Colorado River in your time. You've probably seen condors down there. Who's seen condor in the wild? Just show of hands. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. That's awesome. I'm glad that you get to see them. From the South Rim of Grand Canyon, up northward of Zion National Park, the area named Kolob, Cedar Mountain, that whole area, that's their summer range up in the high country. In the wintertime, we see them more in the low deserts. So I thought about how to show you what we do in the field. And I kind of settled, I don't know, there's a few different presentations I have in the folder, and I thought, why don't I take you through the seasons? We have very distinct seasons with condor work, and we're kind of in one of those transitions now as we transition into fall, and before you know it, it'll be winter. It happens too fast. But I want to start with spring, because spring is a time of new beginnings. And for condors, this is a time of breeding. And this is a male and a female condor starting their mating ritual. The male is on the left, bowing his head to the female with his wings open. The female's on the right, looking mildly interested, maybe. Fortunately, he's persistent. He spreads his wing more. He dances around her. She nibbles at his face. This is the start of a pair bond. Condors mate for life, about as well as humans do. And this pair is no exception to that. They're doing well, actually. They're good for now. They're in counseling currently, but hopefully by spring they get everything sorted out. She's being receptive. She's nibbling his face. There's a lot of this that goes on to build that pair bond. He's still dancing. If she's being receptive, and it's her call. It's always her call. She will let him get on top of her. She'll spread her tail feathers, and they'll do a little more dancing, and hopefully he'll be fertilizing that egg. And boom, we've got wild breeding. We've got successful condors breeding in the wild. It's a beautiful dance. If you stop at the Navajo Bridge in spring, we have 2 breeding pairs there. Now, you're probably going to get to see them. You may even get to see this dance. This is one of our pairs from the Navajo Bridge there in Marble Canyon. If you look really closely, that is their cave on the right. You can see back in there, there is an egg on the ground. And here is a picture of the female coming into the nest, and that is the male incubating. Cool fact about condors, they share the incubation duties. It's not just the female doing all the work. The male contributes too, so they alternate every 3 to 5 days or so. They switch off, give the other one a break, and this goes on for 57 days. Gosh, it's a long incubation period, and you can't screw it up. If you don't keep that egg warm, the embryo will die. So they have a heck of a job ahead of them in the springtime, trying to keep that egg going for that 57 days. And right around that 57-day window, the egg hatches. And you get this little fuzzball. Still cute. This is mom actually meeting that bird for the first time. They grow up, they get bigger. The chicks on the left just got fed by dad, big old crop. Condors have crops. They store their food in this big pouch on their chest, and they slowly digest that because they might not eat for 2 weeks. So they have to be able to store that food and so that they can digest it for a time period. We've now had 49 wild hatch condors in the history of the program. 19 of those are in the wild, surviving in the population today. One of those you might recognize as a celebrity condor, if you will. If any of our condors have made the paper more than this bird, I would be surprised. Condor 1K up in Zion National Park. This was the very first condor fledged in Zion that we know of. So this was 2 years ago. Often can be seen flying over Angel's Landing. If anybody hikes in that area, I've heard they have a new chick this year. It's Condor 1111. That same pair out of the same nest. You will see that bird now. It is flying. It is fledged and flying around Angel's Landing. Pretty cool stuff. Transition into summer a little bit when the birds move into the high elevations. This is that area just north of Zion, Kolob. The birds love it up here. It is absolutely beautiful, cool temperatures, lots of food. Here's a little slide of Aaron Brannon, one of our biologists, tracking birds. This is really important. We spend a lot of time tracking these birds. So I had to throw in a couple pictures because they're beautiful. We do stupid things too. We stand in places we probably shouldn't have. Here's a map of some GPS movements because we do put GPS transmitters on some of our birds. If you notice up in that upper left there, that's Kolob in the summertime. 85% of our population resides in Utah in the summertime. They have a second home. Who doesn't want a second home up on the mountain? That's kind of what we do, right? I can't afford one because I'm a biologist, but someday. This area is absolutely beautiful, but what it is also is a great place for food. Tens of thousands of head of sheep are pulled up onto this mountain for grazing during the summer. And I don't know how many people are familiar with sheep, but they're not the hardiest of livestock. Look at them the wrong way, it's like, condors take advantage of this, finding several sheep a day. And wow, I've seen 30 condors or so come down on a sheep carcass. You find the sheep carcass, hasn't been touched yet. These birds come in and half an hour later, it's skin and bones. So they're providing this excellent ecosystem service, right? They're cleaning up the landscape of dead and rotting meat, preventing the spread of disease. That's their role. That's a very important role. And they're kind of the big dog, right? Other vultures like turkey vultures, ravens, other scavengers, they can't do what condors do. Condors can rip into areas of a carcass that other species can't. So very important role. But summertime, right now, we've transitioned out of summer, I suppose, but the birds are still up there in the fall because there's a lot of deer and there's a lot of elk. So there's a lot of other food up on the mountain. As soon as that snow comes, I think we got about a foot of snow up there actually last week, probably pushed some birds back. Let's go to fall. Fall is one of my favorite times because we get to share our work with you guys, the public. Every year, in the fourth Saturday of September, we hold an annual public condor release where we drive these birds down the month before from our captive breeding facilities and we put them up on the pens up on top of the Vermilion Cliffs and we get to release them into the wild. Any of you guys been to the public condor release? Cool. Some of you, we'll see you next year. It's going to be pretty cool. We've had as many as 800 people gathering here below the Vermilion Cliffs to watch condors released into the wild. We open these pen doors and out they fly. Boom, they're in the wild. But the work doesn't end there. We spend a significant amount of time monitoring these young birds because they do not have parents. These are birds that were raised in captivity in a captive situation. They had parents there, but they didn't grow up on a cliff face. They didn't grow up 1,000 feet above the ground. They don't know what predators are. They have a lot to learn. And so we're out there protecting them. If a young bird like this one landed in a spot that was accessible to a ground predator like a coyote, that's when I say, Josh, go run up the cliffs, pretend to be a coyote, scare the crap out of that bird. We do this a couple times and the birds get it. It starts to make sense. They're like, oh, I shouldn't be in that spot. And so this is just a little bit of training that we do in the first few weeks of that bird's life in the wild to prepare them for the real world. And then they're teenagers, they're off, they're doing their thing, they're hanging out with their friends, and we never see them again. Soon, it will be winter. It's not far off, my goodness. Winter's one of my favorite times here. It's so quiet, it's still, it's peaceful. Yeah, stunning landscapes, but it is also one of the most serious times for us on the Condor project. Because occasionally, I wish I hadn't put this next slide where I did, but I can't change that. But I'm going to show you this. This is drastic transition right now. This is lead ammunition in the digestive tract of a condor. These are lead fragments. And this is the time when we have to be most vigilant as biologists and keep an eye on these birds because the threat of lead on the landscape is at its peak. Why is it a potential threat? Because it's the deer hunt. This is a really important thing for this area. This is one of the revered trophy hunting deer areas in North America. People come from all over to in hopes of drawing a tag here. I'm going to say right off the bat, I am not anti-hunting. This is has nothing to do with being against hunting. I'm actually a hunter. This is about responsible hunting and commitment to land ethic and wildlife. So I'm going to bring you in a little bit on that because condors love gut piles. That tasty treat on the right, that is a condor's, that's like tiramisu for condors. And this is actually Chris Parrish's daughter, Anna. I'll tell you about Chris a little bit later. She's holding a copper bullet. This is a non-lead bullet that she used to harvest her animal. So what we do is we have this beautiful state-of-the-art trapping facility that our crew built last year. This is where we trap condors. So every winter we attempt to trap every individual in the population. And what we want to do is we would just want to draw a blood sample and we want to test that sample to see what the concentration of lead in the blood is. This is a quick assessment that we can do in about 3 minutes, and it gives us a rough idea of the bird's health. If the bird is elevated and has elevated levels of lead in the blood, we can treat that. It's pretty simple. It's a chelation therapy. It's the same thing that we do for humans. We do it for birds all winter. Here's myself drawing some blood with Tom for the lead analyzer. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work, but ultimately we're able to save birds' lives by doing it. So it's important work. We can even x-ray birds if we need to. If a bird has potentially a lead fragment in its GI tract, it will slowly leach out into the bloodstream. So that poisoning event will last longer, and we can monitor that closely in a close setting. Unfortunately, sometimes this time of year, we find birds that have succumbed to lead poisoning. What lead does to the body is it affects the neurological pathways. It binds to calcium receptor sites, and it paralyzes, in essence, it will paralyze the digestive system of the condor. That paralysis will lead to starvation. So we see a lot of what we call crop stasis, where the bird is hungry and it's feeding itself, it's gorging itself on things like gut piles or sheep or cattle, that food is sitting in the crop, but it's not being digested. So if that happens, the bird will starve to death and the crop will start to stink. So that's one of the things we really keep an eye out for. Here's a photo that an x-ray of a photo that we took. A photo of an x-ray, get it right, of a deer. This is an extreme case where a lead-based bullet hit bone. So the composition of bullets, I'll give you a little brief introduction to ballistics. Take a look at the picture in the upper left. Those are two different bullets. One is a lead-based bullet on the left, and one is a solid copper bullet on the right. Copper is one of the best alternatives that we've found, but you'll notice that lead is a very soft material. It breaks down quickly once it enters an animal. This is where that fragmentation comes in. The copper bullet will retain about 99.9% of its mass on average. So it's not that copper isn't toxic. If a bird ingested an entire copper bullet, it would probably do some damage, but most often that is just one piece and it travels through the deer or the elk. One of the really important things that we did, so we had to do a lot of research, a lot of data collection to find out what was causing birds to die in the wild. And by collecting gut piles, by collecting birds that had perished in the wild and x-raying those, we were able to link lead ammunition as one of the leading causes of mortality. But that was just identifying the problem. Now we had to find a solution. So our strategy at the Peregrine Fund is to try to make friends, not enemies. So we went to the state agencies that manage the herds in the Kaibab Plateau and in southern Utah, and we talked to them. We identified this problem. Let's try to do something about it. There are some alternatives that we could offer to hunters. How do we do that? And so Arizona Game and Fish was one of the early organizations that came on and started this non-lead ammunition program back in 2005, where they were going to educate their hunting brethren and offer a free box of non-lead ammunition to everybody who drew a tag within the range of the Condor and say, hey, you have the opportunity to help us. We have a problem. There is a solution. Will you help us? Here's the information. Here's the solution. Come aboard. And that has been actually highly successful. We also teamed up with Utah and did the same thing. And since 2005, we're now averaging 87% voluntary participation from the hunting community to use non-lead ammunition. And if you add in the folks that are willing to haul out their gut piles, not a fun task, we incentivize that too, because any lead removed from the landscape is a good thing for scavenging wildlife. We're up at around 90% participation. This is kind of cool because there were two ways to do this, right? We could try to bring the hunting community in on what we've found and ask them to help with the solution, or we could go the complete opposite way, and we could have gone to our legislatures and said, let's ban lead. Lead is bad, lead is killing wildlife, let's ban it. We chose the first option because we believe that a law is only as good as those who follow it. California went the other way. They didn't do any education and outreach beforehand. They passed this law, they pissed everybody off, and it hasn't gone very well. They had to do a lot of backfilling of education and outreach. Whereas here, we've kind of set ourselves up for success with a great number of the hunting community participating in this program. We're already there. If it's banned at some point, great. We've already got pretty good participation rates. And this all led to the development of the North American Non-Lead Partnership. How am I doing on time? What do I got? Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, it's been a heck of a ride. And, you know, I'm pretty proud of the way we've approached the problem and pretty proud of the hunting community and the way they've accepted the possible solutions. And ultimately, we realized that there's a big conservation ethic within the hunting community, and they want to be a part of this. And all they want to do is be brought into it instead of being told what to do, right? Any of us, we don't want to be told what to do. We want to be presented with information and be able to make an informed decision. So that is something I'm proud of. We've done a really good job of bringing the hunting community in and being a part of the solution, because ultimately, who can solve the problem but people that are shooting? So that's where we're at. We've spent a lot of time thinking about this. This is my last final happy picture of condors, putting our heads together, coming up with solutions, and the future looks good for condors. The participation rates of people using non-lead ammunition is awesome. We're removing lead from the landscape for all scavenging wildlife, and that's what's really important here. Whether it be bald eagles, golden eagles, coyotes, anybody that eats this stuff, we know lead's toxic, but we know there's a solution too. So it doesn't happen alone. Here's our field crews. Not only do we work, but we have a lot of fun, and I couldn't do it without my family. They make me, they make me who I am. They allow me to do this work. So lastly, Chris Parrish, you guys might have known him. You might have seen him talk before. He's my mentor. He is now the president and CEO of the Peregrine Fund as of last week. So congrats to Chris. And congrats to all the partners that are involved in this program. If you guys want to join the team, I'm stopping. I'm done. Condor Cliffs is our Facebook. You can join the Peregrine Fund at peregrinefund.org. Come visit us. But thank you.